a gigantic monstrous creature with an insatiable hunger for human flesh. A myth from the folklore of indigenous people of North America. According to the legends of several tribes of the Algonquin-speaking people, an eerie creature inhabits the forests. It says, if you suddenly feel an icy chill and the air is filled with the scent of decaying flesh, be cautious. These could be signs of the arrival of an hideous creature whose name roughly translated means the evil spirit that devours mankind. Hey guys, welcome to my first episode. My name is Jay, and today we will explore the myth of the Wendigo. The Algonquin were primarily settled on the east coast of Canada, as well as in the Great Lakes region. The myth of the Wendigo is one of many and exists in their history for many centuries. The descriptions of the Wendigo depending on the tribe, but often share common traits. Therefore, I will not go into every single version, but instead describe one of the most well-known depictions that I have researched. A humanoid figure, yet much taller. A deformed skeletal being with mummy-like skin, long claws, missing lips, and sunken glowing eyes. An overall corpse-like appearance. A common misconception spread by modern pop culture is that the Wendigo has antlers, especially through movies and video games, a few of which I will mention later. According to legend, a Wendigo is created whenever a human becomes a cannibal or their spirit is corrupted by greed or weakened by extreme conditions such as hunger and cold. It is said that in the freezing northern forests, both indigenous people and settlers struggle to survive when the food supplies run out. Desperate and starving, some may have resorted to consuming their dead in order to stay alive. However, from that moment on, there was no turning back. The legend claims that this act triggers an insatiable craving for human flesh, slowly transforming the person into something inhuman. The emotions fade, and they can no longer tolerate normal food, vomiting it up immediately. Eventually, they complete their transmission into the creature itself. From then on, the hunger and the greed become endless, impossible to satisfy. The Wendigo is said to roam the forests in an eternal hunt for food. It is believed to be extremely fast and agile, making any confrontation with it highly inadvisable. To kill a Wendigo, his heart must be stopped and his corpse has to be burned. Some believe that doing so will also free the spirit of the person who had been possessed by the creature. The legend of the Wendigo also influences a controversial term in psychology, the Wendigo Psychosis. It is said that those who are affected develop a craving for human flesh or fear that they might develop such a craving. Between the 17th and the 19th century, cases were documented in which people during extreme periods of hunger, such as during harsh winters, showed signs of Wendigo psychosis. Some ethnologists and psychologists debate whether this was actually a distinct mental disorder or more of a culturally influenced fear reaction. Today, the existence of Wendigo psychosis is doubted by many experts. It may be a mix of mental illnesses such as schizophrenia or delusions and culturally passed down fears. Nevertheless, it serves as a compelling example of the intersection between mythology and psychology. To defend against Wendigos or prevent the transformation, Wendigo hunters existed, and the last of them was the shaman Jack Fiddler. He was a member of the Cree tribe and is said to have killed at least 14 supposed Wendigos during his life. Fiddler claimed that he could recognize and kill Wendigos before they attacked people. The people he killed were mostly sick and had asked to be killed, or their families had hired him to do so. In 1907, Jack Fiddler were arrested by the Royal Northwest Mounted Police. The reason? He had killed an elderly woman who was allegedly in the process of transforming into a Wendigo. While this was considered a necessary spiritual act by the tribe, the Canadian government saw it as murder. He was eventually charged and sentenced to death, but before his execution, he took his own life. The most well-known case of an alleged Wendigo psychosis occurred in 1879 in Fort Saskatchewan, Alberta, Canada. According to reports, the winter that year was very harsh, bringing a severe famine to the Cree people who were native to the region. This also affected a Cree man named Swift Runner. Those around him described him as a trustworthy, considerate husband and an experienced trapper. However, he frequently gave in to alcohol, and when he drank, he became aggressive and unpleasant. In that state, he was known to be an ugly customer to meet, so unpleasant that some called him the terror of the whole region. Standing over 6 feet tall and possessing extraordinary strength, even the police sometimes avoided him. For the winter season, he went with his mother, his brother, wife and their 6 children to their winter camp to hunt and spend the cold month. But in the spring he returned alone. He went to the police and told them that his family had starved to death, and that he was the only survivor. The officers became suspicious because he appeared well fed. I found this version of the story on the Royal Canadian Mounted Police website. In another version he went to the church, but then the events followed the same course. Inspector Xavier Gagnon traveled with a small police unit and Swift Runner to his camp. Upon arrival, the suspect immediately showed them a small grave, claiming one of his sons was buried there. Around the area of the grave, more bones were found. When Inspector Gagnon found a human skull belonging to an adult, he confronted Swift Runner with it, and without much resistance, Swift Runner confessed that it was his wife's skull. His detailed confession shook the lawman. He admitted to having killed, cooked, and eaten his family. He spoke of horrifying nightmares in which the spirit of the Wendigo haunted him, commanding him to consume the people around him. He was then sentenced to death by hanging. The death sentence was to be the first legal hanging in the Canadian Northwest Territories, an area that includes what is now the province of Alberta. The execution had been ordered to take place at 7:30 a.m. on December 20th, 1879. But the execution was delayed due to issues with the gallows. While the sheriff and the hangman were trying to get everything ready, Swift Runner sat nearby, eating and joking while the noose was already around his neck. "I could kill myself with a tomahawk," he offered, "and spare the hangman further trouble." He was hanged a little later. I also found an article in the newspaper, the Daily Evening Mercury. The article indicates some differences in the way Swift Runner's discovery was described. The article reveals details that may not align with other versions of the story, suggesting a different sequence of events regarding his capture. In case you want to read the article, I've put the link in the video description. That was the tale of an alleged Wendigo psychosis. The number of other reports is limited, and many of them are questionable in the terms of their authenticity and context. As I mentioned earlier, the Wendigo also appears in modern media, for example in some video games, like The Witcher 3, where I first encountered the myth, or the horror game Until Dawn. The Wendigo also been featured in several films, such as Antlers, Ravenous, The Last Winter, or even in the film titled Wendigo, just to name a few. There's also a book called The Wendigo by Algernon Blackwood. I've listed everything for you in the show notes. I would love to know what you thought about my first episode, so feel free to leave a comment or a like or send me a message. Take care and see you soon.